As far as materials go, you will need some medium weight yarn. Could be worsted, could be DK. For this project, you would also need a 5mm crochet hook. You will need some stitch markers, a darning needle to sew your pieces together, and you will need a scissors to cut your yarn. To begin, we're going to make a slip knot. Go ahead and make your slip knots however you can. And then grab your hook and insert it into that slip knot. Adjust it, and now we're going to chain 40 chains. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So now we're going to chain an extra one, which is going to serve as our turning chain. So now we're going to flip our work to the back because we're going to be working into the back bumps of the stitches. So insert your hook into that second back bump and grab your yarn and pull through, and then complete the stitch. And then I'm going to insert my hook underneath that second back bump, yarn over, pull through with 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through the 2 loops on the hook, and you've just completed a single crochet. And we're going to repeat this into all the stitches, making single crochet into the back bumps until we've exhausted it. Once you've completed your first row of single crochet into the back bumps, we're going to start working on the second row. So chain 1 and turn your work. Now we're going to work into the back loop of the stitches, working single crochet. So insert your hook into that back loop and then pull up the yarn, and then yarn over and pull through the 2 loops on the hook, and that's a single crochet. And then just repeat that into all the back loops, and this is the pattern for the second row of the bag. So once you've completed the second row, we're going to start the third row by making 1 chain and turning our work. And now we're going to work into the back loops, but we're going to also pick up that loop of the first row, that front loop of the first row that we did not work into. So insert your hook into the back loop and insert your hook further down into that front loop of row 1, like that, and then grab onto the yarn and pull through both loops. We have 2 loops on the hook, yarn over and pull through 2 loops on the hook. And one more time, insert your hook into the back loop and insert your hook again into the loop that is beneath it. Grab the yarn and pull through both loops, yarn over and finish the stitch. And this stitch is called the thermal stitch. It's a very thick it creates a very thick and dense fabric, and this is the stitch that makes up the most part of our bag. So repeat that into all the stitches until you have exhausted all of it. Now to begin the fourth row, chain 1 and turn your work. And we're pretty much repeating row 3, which is inserting your hook into the back loop and into the front loop beneath, and then grab your yarn and pull through both loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops on the hook. And like I mentioned earlier, this stitch is called the thermal stitch, and we're going to work the stitch from row 4 up until we have 35 rows complete. It might be slightly difficult to count your rows while you're working the stitch, so I would recommend that you're counting as you go, so that you don't lose count of your stitches, of your rows rather. So once you've completed 35 rows, you are going to go ahead to mark the 11th stitch, counting from both sides of the work. So count 11 stitches from here and put your stitch marker in the 11th stitch, and do the same thing for this side. And now we're going to start by working on this side. So make 1 chain and turn your work, and then we're going to put 1 stitch into all 11 stitches. Remember, here we're still working the thermal stitch, so insert your hook into that back loop and into that front loop of the previous row and complete your stitch. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then I'm just going to take out the stitch marker and make my 11th stitch, like so. Now to begin the second row, do not chain, just turn your work, okay? And we are going to skip this stitch, which is our first stitch that will normally work a stitch into. We're going to skip it and go into the second one here. So insert your hook into that second stitch and slip stitch. So I picked up my 2 loops and I'm making a slip stitch, and then into the next one, which is the third stitch. Now I'm going to make a thermal stitch. So that's 1, 2, 3. To begin the third row, we're going to chain 1 and turn, and then we're going to start by working 1 single crochet into the first 8 stitches. So, well, 1 thermal stitch. Make sure you're picking up both loops. That's 2, 3, that's 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay, and then into the last stitch here, we're going to make a slip stitch. So we have 9 stitches for this round. Okay, and now we're not going to chain. For the fourth row, we're just going to turn our work to the other side, and then we're going to slip stitch. So skip the first stitch and then make slip stitch in the next 2 stitches. So we have 1 and 2. Now I'm going to work single crochets in the next 3. 1, 2, and 3. And then we have 2 stitches left. 3. We have 3 stitches left, so I'm going to work half double crochet, 1 and 2, half double crochets in 2 stitches, and then I'm going to complete by working a double crochet into the last stitch. the double crochet there into the last stitch, and at this point you can cut your yarn and fasten off for this end. And so what we've just created is this gradual slope. Don't worry about this bump, it's because of the stitch that we skipped here. We're still going to work over that. So what we've just done is to create a gradual slope here, and we're going to repeat the same thing for this side, but not entirely the same way. Okay, so for this side we started working from the side here, but for this one we're going to work from the single crochet from the 11th stitch that we marked. Okay, so take out that stitch marker from that stitch and then insert your hook into it like you would work your thermal stitch, and grab your yarn and pull it through, make one chain, and then work the thermal stitch into that same stitch. So we have one, and then work the thermal stitch into all the remaining stitches. Two, three, and now to start row 2 we're going to chain 1 and turn, and then we're going to make one stitch each in the next 9 stitches. The first 9 stitches, this is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And then in the next stitch I'm going to make a slip stitch. So yarn over, pull through and pull through, and then we're just going to leave the last stitch and not work into it. For row 3, don't chain and just turn your work, and then we're going to skip this first stitch and then slip stitch into the next stitch like so, and then we're going to work single crochets into the remaining stitch until the end. Now on the fourth and final row, chain 2 and turn your work. Now make one double crochet into your first stitch, followed by 2 half double crochets, 1 and 2, and then single crochets, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then in this stitch before the last stitch we're just going to make a slip stitch, and here we can just fasten off. So chain 1 and cut the excess yarn. So pull through and just pull on that, and just like this we have made the 2 sides. Now we're going to walk around the body. So now I'm going to start here. I'm going to insert my hook into the stitch. This time around I'm walking more like I'm just walking into my regular stitches. I'm not going to be making the thermal stitch for this top row. I'm just going to make one single crochet into all the stitches until I get here. I'm going to grab my yarn, then I'm just going to insert my hook into that first stitch, and then pull up the yarn, and then make one chain, and then start working single crochet into all the stitches. By the time you're done you should have about 39 or 40 single crochet stitches, so just keep that in mind. to try to do my single crochets as tight as I can, and the most important is to weave in all of these ends, these loose ends, so that your work looks nice and neat. And just go into all those stitches that we made, making sure to work down. Okay, so I ended up with 39 stitches. This is what it looks like all cleaned up. As you can see, there's a little there's some ridges here because our last row was not worked into both loops, right? Like we do for the thermal stitch, right? It was worked only into the top of the stitches like you would normally work your stitches. Okay, so this is what we have. But when you turn it to the back, you can see that it is completely smooth here. There are no ridges, there's no nothing. And this back is our front. Okay, so the next thing is to repeat all of this from the beginning till the end to make a second piece. You're going to repeat that process one more time until you have a second piece. This is my second piece all done, and as you can see here it's completely smooth, and here we have the ridges. Okay, so this is going to be inside our bag and not outside, and it could even help us to attach a lining to the bag, but let's leave that for later. Okay, so once you have your two pieces all done, just set them aside, grab your hook, grab your yarn also, and now we're going to start working on the strap. So make a slip knot, and then we're going to chain 8 chains. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so skip the first back bump and go into the second back bump and make a single crochet, and repeat that for all the stitches. Okay, so you should have 7 stitches in your first row. Now make 1 chain, turn your work, and now we're going to go into the back bumps and make single crochet. Sorry, into the back loops now and make single crochets. That's our second row all complete. Chain 1 and turn, and now we're going to start the thermal stitch proper. Insert your hook into the back loop of the second row and into the front loop that was left of the first row, and pull up the yarn with 2 loops on the hook. Complete your single crochet, and we are going to repeat this thermal stitch into all the stitches till the end of this row. Okay, so we're basically going to repeat this until we have, I think, 160 rows, but I'll come back to update you. So this is what my strap looks like so far. I think I've made about 160 rows here, or is it 80 rows? I'm not sure, but this is like half of what I need, because let me just show you what it looks like when I wrap this around, starting from the base of the bag. and then up to here, and then up to here. So about that. So I have about that left to complete the bag. So keep at it, and yeah, let's go, let's go, let's go. Once you have completed 270 rows, or if you cannot count the rows, you can measure 45 inches. So for this belt, this strap is 45 inches, but I would show you how I count my rows just in case you lose count of your work. So first thing is that I make sure that I stop on the opposite side of where I started. So this is where I started my work, this is where I stop. And what this does is that this ensures that I have an even number of stitches. So once you have an even number of stitches, it's easy to count your work. So what I do is that I count the ridges. Okay, so as you can see these ridges: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then you count it all the way to the end, and then you multiply your value by 2. Note, if you count from here, you've counted this first ridge, you don't need to count this last one that is hanging at the back here. Combined with that first one, it already counts as 2 stitches. Sorry, as 2 rows. So once you have that count, you multiply your value by 2, and that is the number of rows that you have. Now, if you're trying to count an odd number of rows, for example, for this one, we made 35 rows, which is an odd number. So what I did is that I made um I made up to 34, which is 17 when I count the ridges. Okay, then I now made one extra one, and that's how I know that I have 35 rows, like an odd number of rows, before I started working on the side shaping. Okay, so I hope that that helps. Now we are going to leave a long tail. So don't cut your yarn. You're going to leave a very long tail when you are done, because we're going to use that long tail to weave in our end. So get your long, sorry, you need a darning needle at this point, and then I'm just going to pull my yarn through to secure it here. Okay, so I didn't make any chain, I just pulled it through to secure it. Now grab your darning needle and thread your extra tail onto the darning needle. Okay, like so. And now we're ready to sew. So let's set this aside and then arrange our front and back pieces. So these are my front and back pieces. Remember that the part that has this ridge is going to be inside. Okay, so the part that doesn't have, that is completely smooth, like the pattern is consistent, is what's going to be outside. Okay, so now we're going to place our strap around the back. Okay, so we're going to start joining from here. We're going to start joining from here, the base here. So this is where my working yarn is, and then we're going to start joining from the base here. Like this one, the strap doesn't matter which side you pick. Okay, so it's the same thing, front and back, so it doesn't matter at all. So this is my yarn here. I'm going to join from this end, and I'm going to walk around, starting with the first one, like this. Okay, so let's do that. So to join this, I'm going to start by inserting the yarn, my hook, into the base or the stitch. Okay, remember at the beginning when we started our chains, we worked into the back bumps for our first row. That's why we have 2 stitches to insert that's 2 loops like this to insert our hook into. So it's like you're going into a proper stitch. Okay, so go into that stitch and just pull through gently, and then I'm going to go back into this first stitch, the last stitch rather, for my back strap, and then back into that first stitch again. That is just to secure the yarn. Just pull on it tightly. Okay. Now we're going to be grabbing the side bumps. You can see the side bumps of our strap, and we are going to be grabbing the chain or the stitch that is further away from us here. Okay, so we're not going to go into both of them. We're just going to grab the side bump here and the front, the top chain here. Okay, because we want our work to lay like this. So that's the second one. And I'm just going to repeat that. That is the third one. This is what we're having. So once you make it to the corner here, this is what you should have, and this flexibility is sort of what we're trying to achieve. That's why we went into the stitches that we went into. Okay, so now we're going to work the corner, and to do this you're just basically repeating the same thing. It's just that now you're working into the side of the stitch as opposed to the bottom or the top of the stitches where you can see the actual stitches, but here you're working into the side of the stitch. Okay, so here I'm just going to pick up the next bump here and then go into that, and then come over here to pick up this bump. So it's like we're going into bump and bump because we are working on side and side. And then just pull that through, then go into the next bump, then come here to pick up the next one and pull that nice and tight. And as you can see, it's beginning to form. I'm going to do one more on camera. Bump and bump. That is our corner. Okay, so you just want to keep at it until you get to the side. So now that we are finished joining the base and the side, we're going to attach our yarn here and join from this base to the top here, and after that we're now going to join these two sides together. So at this point we've just completed the first half of our sewing, and now we're going to repeat the same thing on this second half. So now we're going to attach the second part of the bag, starting from this corner here, and just work your way just the same way we made the other side. Just work your way to the side and then join the side. Okay, so I'm going to do that off camera, and I'll be back to show you my finished bag.